Hello and welcome to the Toolkit for Traders YouTube channel where we give you the tools for trading success. And in this video, we're looking at orders. We're going to look at placing orders with our expert advisor that we've been building and how we can do that with MQL5. More specifically, we'll be looking at opening market orders, keeping hold of those order tickets so we can use that in the future, and then we can look at closing them. But there will be a problem that will be deliberate and it will be up to you to solve it in your homework. What fun. Okay, so the quote for today's lesson: a bucket shop is an office with facilities for making bets in the form of orders or options based on current exchange prices of securities or commodities, but without any actual buying or selling of the property. That was in the New York Times, 1958. And the image down there is of an original bucket shop with the ticks coming in on the ticker tape, which is where we get the name from. So the ticker tape comes in with the new prices across the telegram, as was the technology then. Prices written on the boards, and then people putting bets on it going up or down, much like contract for differences in today's market. They had a significant disadvantage in these bucket shops: wide spreads and shady practices. People are losing a lot of their money with high margin, a bit like betting shops you might see around the country, particularly in the UK, if you're familiar with that today. So that's what we're up against. It's not much has changed. The technology has changed, but we still have a challenging time to make money. So it's important to understand that. But the important thing is we know how to open and close our trades so that we can hopefully make a profit. So just before we get started, I really appreciate if you like the video, subscribe to the channel, click the bell icon if you want notifications when new videos come out. And if you do have any questions, put a comment down below, or any feedback for future videos or what I'm doing. I really appreciate that. I have taken into account feedback from the comments and made the videos better, I think. So really appreciate all those people who have already done that, and why not do that yourself? So we're going to look at market orders today and how we can implement those with MQL5. So the first, a bit of theory, we have to understand how we process a market order in MQL5. Now, if you used to using MetaTrader 5 and used to pressing a blue or a red button to buy or to sell, you may not understand what's happening beneath it and what's going on. So in order to open a position in the market, we have to send our request to the server that we're using, the server that's provided by a broker. So we send that request over, and we do that using a function. Now, when we send it over, it isn't immediately executed exactly as we say. There is a time delay, even very, very minuscule time delay in terms of the electronic transmission of your request between there and the server. Then the server's got to implement, and then they've got to send you a response back to tell you whether your trade was executed and at what price. Because if you're using market execution, typically you're not fixing the price specifically or trading immediately, and you might incur slippage between in that delay, and that might be delay that is just due to the electronic transmission of your message and the server delay, etc., or it may even be delay that's deliberately put on by shady brokers, of which there are many, unfortunately. So in MQL5, we use a function to send, an inbuilt function to send our request. So we'll look at that now. So to open the order, we use the order send function, which you can see here. So, and this will return a bool, and the bool will say whether our send has been successful. This isn't to say that our trade has been successful and we've successfully opened. It's just saying that the order send was successfully sent, if that makes sense. So think about if you're used to using something like WhatsApp, you have the blue ticks in the corner of your message. The first grey tick that you get is to say your order has been sent. And that's what we get back from here, is the sort of first grey tick there. And we get the second grey, or maybe this is a second grey tick, but either way, it's the grey ticks to say the message has been sent then I think the second tick is to say that it's been received on the other person's. But anyway, but you see the point. It's not the blue tick which you get when the message has been read. I think so. We use the order send and to send our request. Then we have to put in to the function. We have to put in two special types of objects. Now we have to put in a MQL trade request object and an MQL trade result. So we spoke in the past about object-oriented programming and what we can do with it, and we will talk a bit more and extend some of that knowledge. But in MQL5, which is different than MQL4, we have to send an object, kind of like an envelope. So we send our letter with the details of what we want in an envelope, and then we also send a blank return envelope for the server to send the message back to us, and that's this result object. Now, specifically, they're called structures, which are like objects we've covered before, but they don't hold functions and methods that we've spoken about. They just hold different kinds of variables, which we'll look at in a moment. So we'll have to create these two objects, which is simple enough, and I'll show you how to do that. We send those to, like we send blank return envelopes, we send that to them, and then the server will return those objects back to us with the information filled in. And then we can use that to assess how our trade has been executed, and whether it's been successful, and what price it's been, and what the volume's been, etc., and what the ticket number is. So it's not like MQL4 where you just use the function directly and send the message. Here, and in MQL4 used to get returned an integer, which was the ticket number. MQL5, we get all the information in this result object here, and we get a bool that tells us whether the send message operation has been successful. So we in order to do that, we need to in order to send that, the first step is to fill in this request information. Think of it like a questionnaire, right? You've got a pre-filled out questionnaire, and you're going to post it to say, I want to open a trade. Maybe this is what they would have done back in the day, when they would have had to trade using mail in the 19th century. You would fill out a pre-position questionnaire saying, I want to open at this price, I want my volume to be this much, and I want to be on this market, and etc. We fill in that information, and then we post it, and we also post the blank envelope for the return result. So in order to build the request, the first thing we do is like when we're declaring our variable, we need to say what the variable type is. So in this case, we're saying the type of variable we're about to make is an MQL trade request type. Now, this is specific to MQL5, and it is a structured object that's pre-built in, and it can contain lots of different information. We give it a simple name that makes it easy for us to understand, like request. We don't need to be any fancier than that. And we've created our request object. It's got nothing in it at the moment. We need to fill that in. So what do we need to fill in? So this is our questionnaire that we need to put in. Not all of these are mandatory, but they're quite useful. And you can see here on the screen what those different things are. And this is directly from the MQL5 documentation. So we'll go through some of these, the important ones, in a moment. But if you want to look at more detail about what else you can do, you can look into the MQL5 documents, look at the MQL trade request object, and it will bring it up, and you'll be able to see all this information there and what it is. In order to send the request, we also need to give our pre-packaged envelope for the result. So we create a very similar object, but this time it's an MQL trade result object. We give it a different name, so it's easy for us to understand that this is the return information. And then we start to build our request object and put the information in. So we have our request.action, which is what kind of order we want, and we want a market order in this example, so we're going to use trade action deal. This is an enumerated integer that's built into MQL5, and there are other types. We'll look at some of those when we go into the practical example using the documentation there. We say that what type of request it is. So we want a market order. We want it to be a order type by order. We put in the symbol. In this case, we use the predefined variable underscore symbol, which is the current symbol that this expert advisor is loaded onto. You could, of course, put a string in there for the symbol specifically. And then the volume, which is a double, so it has a decimal place, and this will be in lots, however lots is defined on your server. We can then also put in the type filling. So different servers will have different policies on the filling, maybe fill or kill, immediate or cancel. If you don't put this information in, it will default to whatever the default server is. The price, now we do have to put the price in, and if we're doing a buy order, we have to pay the asking price. So we collect with this symbol info double function the current symbol and the ask price that we want to trade at. We then put in, we can put in our stop loss price. This is not in pips, this is in the actual physical price that we want to put in, or you can put 0 to not enter a stop loss or take profit. We can put in a deviation, which is the how far from the price that we've entered up here, how far in points that we're willing to go before we want that trade to be cancelled. So typically this will be slippage. You don't want to be slipped more than 50 points. So you put that in there, and so that the order won't go through if that happens. And we can also put in a magic number, which we covered in the MQL4. And this is just a unique number that helps us to identify different trading systems from each other within our expert advisor. So it's a unique number. You can use any that you want. Doesn't have any bearing on the actual execution, but it's important to, if you have multiple expert advisors, that you're using different numbers for those so they can be identified differently. Finally, we put a function in to send the order. We said before, we use that function now. You can put in a variable for to retrieve the bool information if you want to, and we'll look at that in the practical example. But ultimately, what the minimum we need to do is send the request in, send the result envelope to collect the information, and that will go off to the broker. So just to go over some of those things again, the symbol here, we use the symbol with the previous variable. You could also use the Euro USD in the speech marks, and you could do that, hard code that, or you could use you could do your analysis on one symbol and then trade on another one. Whatever you might want to do, that could be useful. So looking at the request.action, we use trade action deal. We tell the terminal what kind of order we want to open. Trade action deal places an order for immediate execution with the specified parameters, which is a market order. A trade action pending is to place a pending order for things like limit orders or a stop order. And you've also got the different actions within the MQL5 docs, including closing the order, modifying the order, say you want to add a take profit and stop loss, or to remove the order if it's not been opened fully yet, you can do that to remove. So we've got pending order and just a diagram I will actually cover on there. Pending order, limit order, you're saying that the price is away from where you are and you want to wait till the price comes down there, and then you'll take the order hoping for it to be met in the opposite direction. The volume for your order, like I said, is a double, so it has a number with a decimal place. It will be in lots. So how much money do we want to place on the trade? Most accounts will have one lot as 100,000, or there are some out there that will have it as 10,000. So you need to check with your server. You can do that in the expert advisor automatically, which we'll cover later. And 0.01 is usually the minimum, which equates to about $1,000. The price we use, we need to enter in, and we use the symbol info double function, ask for buying orders and bid for sell orders. For pending orders, we let the terminal know what price we want to get into the market. So we won't use the symbol info double function. We'll just set a price that we want to. If it's a buy order and your price is below, then it's going to be a limit. If it's above, it's going to be a stop order. Deviation is an important one. It's the maximum distance in points from the price that we've quoted that we want to, before we want to pull the entry. We need to set this quite large, because in an expert advisor, you don't want to miss too many trades, particularly on closing trades. And notice that this is an integer, so no decimal points in there, and it is points, which is the smallest price change on your account. So for most servers in your USD, 10 points will be 1 pip, and it will show up as 0.0010. So it's important to be aware of the difference between points and pips, and that's something we'll cover in later episodes when we look at money management and risk management. We can set stop loss and take profit. You can set it to 0 to leave that blank, but you also can set a price for that. So you can't say I want a 20 pip stop loss and just send the number 20. You would need to either calculate that beforehand or just not do it. So if you had a buy order that was at 1.23456 and you wanted a 20 pip stop loss, as in a 200 point stop loss, in most cases you would have to minus the 200 points from that to get the price that you want your stop loss to be, that 123,256, and that's what you would send as your stop loss. If you set it to 0, it will be blank. Request type filling, you can use fill or kill, which is the whole order gets filled or not at all. You can use filling immediate or cancel, which is as much can be filled at the price as will be, or filling return. If the whole order succeeds, a follow-up order. If not the whole order succeeds, a follow-up order is issued with the remaining volume. So they're the different kinds. If you don't specify, it will default. But if you're specific, you want a certain type of filling, then you can use that, and you can look at that more in the MQL5 docs. So we've sent our order in, and we want to get some information back, and the MQL result will be returned to us with some information filled in. It will have a return code or a RET code, which is any success code or error information in performing that order. We will get the deal ticket if it's performed. We will get the order ticket if it's placed. So there is a difference between the deal and the order. Crucially, we want the order number. We'll get the volume, how much of the volume was actually traded. We'll get the price confirmed by the broker. We'll get the current bid and ask price at when that was done. And we'll also get any comments from the broker as well, request ID, and an external RET code. So there's some of the information. You don't have to use all of it. You don't have to use any of it, but that's some of the information you can get back from and there. In the RET code, which is a crucial one, you'll get RET code done or RET code place, which tells us if we've placed our trade or order. So that's something useful information, because in our expert advisor, we'll want to know if our order went through, and if it didn't, we might want to take that trade again. So it's important to know whether that trade went through. Okay, so we'll just take a pause before we go on to the meta editor and look at this example. Just remind you about the community we have on toolkitfortraders.com. The forum we closed down because it started to get full of spam, so we put a Discord channel in the description below, which you can join and join the conversation there. Best way to contact me, though, is on the YouTube comments below. That's where I'm most active. But also join the Discord channel, where you can get the source files and PDF lessons for this series. You can also go on the Toolkit for Traders website, where you'll also find the source files and PDFs for the lessons. If you also want to reach out or find out what else we're doing over here, you can get us on Discord, and we post on X, Instagram, on YouTube, obviously, and also on the website. So without further ado, let's go to the meta editor, and we'll use what we've learned in the first half of this lesson to create a order send function so that our expert advisor can finally implement its own trades. Okay, so we're back in the meta editor, taking over from where we got to in the last lesson. So the first thing we'll do is we'll save this as a new file, so we don't override any of the changes we made in the last lesson. We keep a track of where we've been going. And what we're going to do in this lesson is we're going to implement some order opening script, so that our expert advisor will actually open trades based on the momentum indicator we used in the last lesson. And then we can use the strategy tester to actually test our expert advisor for the first time. So the first thing we're going to do, because we're going to be opening up orders, is we're going to create an input variable for our volume, because we want to be able to set the volume that our trades are going to be. So we'll create a double variable, which is an input specifically. So this will appear in the inputs for the expert advisor. Give it the name trade volume, nice and simple, 0.1 lots, equivalent to say $10,000 usually. And then we're also going to give a comment here for the panel that comes up when you open the expert advisor inputs, so that we've got a name that makes sense and we've got the units. So we've got our input, we know what volume we're going to do. We also need to create a couple of global variables. So I'm going to create a section here, which I didn't before, but we'll create a section here called global variables. So we've got them in a nice section. And this is going to be a bool, so true or false, and it's going to be by placed or G cell place. Now the G simply is to help us know that it's a global variable, and what they're going to do is they're going to be true when there's a buy on the chart already, or false if there's not, and the same applies in reverse for a sell. And that's going to help us not to open more than one trade in any direction, because if we don't have these, then we might, if the momentum is positive, we might continue to open positive trades. You may want to do this, but in the case of this indicator that the expert advisor we're making, we don't want to do that. So we're going to use these bool global variables just to help us hold information about what's happening on the chart currently. They're just names I've given them. You could call them anything else, but we need to actually fill them up with information. So just by simply declaring them, we haven't told the expert advisor that that's what it is. It's not an inbuilt variable. We will fill that in a moment. So we need to come down to the onTick function here, which is where the bulk of our code is. We've got our indicator section where we set up our indicator. We've got our message area, which actually has the trade logic we want. So what we're going to do is we're going to split this up, and we're going to have a section here for trade logic. And we need to do a few things. So in these slides, we said previously, we need to create these MQL trade request objects. So you can see the helper brings up the trade request object there. That's the type of variable. We need to give it a name, which is going to simply be request. And we also need to create an MQL trade result type, and we're just going to give this name result. So these are envelopes, one to send, one to receive, for the information. Now, one thing we do need to do with these, which we didn't cover in the slides, but it's a very simple thing, is we need to use this zero memory function. And the zero memory function is going to clear that is going to clear the variable of any information, because and we're going to be using what's called pass by reference. When we get the information back, it'll be done by reference, and we need to make sure that we reset those variables in there. If we didn't do that, we might get some weird things happening with our order send and order received. So let's just clear those. So we simply use that function and put in our request object and say, I want you to clear this. So it's completely blank. Think of it like a chalkboard. We're just going to wipe that chalkboard clean before we use those. So it just clears that of any information. You don't need to know too much about it, but when you create these objects, good practice to clear them so you don't get any leftover information from a previous iteration of them within what you're currently doing. So we're now into this part where we're looking at the momentum, and we need to get some information from any trades we've already opened. So obviously when you start the expert advisor, it will have no trades open. So this won't necessarily work straight away, but once we get going, we need to know, we need the expert advisor to keep track of some of the information going on currently, like open trades. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a variable to hold the ticket number of any open trades. So when this starts, it will be 0, which it means we don't have a ticket. but we're going to check if there is any position open on the chart. If there is, we want to get that ticket number. So the way we're going to get that ticket number is by using a function. So I'm going to use an if statement here, and I'll explain in a second. So position select. So the position select function can take two types of inputs. It can take a ticket number, or it can take just the symbol of the chart that you want to get the position from. So in this case, we use the current symbol. So we're saying to think about it, I want you to select the position. I want you to choose the position that's open on the current chart. Because we're only going to have one trade open at a time, this is absolutely fine. And this function then will select in the background that position so that we can get information from it in future lines of code. And what it will do, if there is a position open, it will return true. If there is not a position open, it's going to return false. So we can actually use this to tell us whether we've got a position open on that chart. So if there is a position open, this will resolve as true. And we can then say, if there is a position open, update our ticket variable. So we can use the position get integer, which is an inbuilt function, and this can get various bits of information from our positions. So you can see the different information we can get on our positions, but what we want is here the ticket. So press return on ticket there, and that puts that enum into the function. And so what's going to happen if there's a position true, if there's an open position on this symbol, it's going to return true. So this code block here will implement. What that's going to do then is it's going to fill that ticket variable with the ticket number that's retrieved by this position get integer function. Again, if you want to look at that, you can press F1 when you highlight that, and it will show you how to use that position get integer function, as well as all the different bits of information that you can retrieve using that function and similar functions. So now we've got our ticket number, which is useful. If we do have an open position, we have a ticket number. That's especially useful when we want to close our position. So the next thing we want to do is we want to know if we do have a position open, so we're still within this code block here, we want to know if we've got a buy position open or a sell position open, because if the momentum has gone negative and we've got a buy position open, we want to close our trade. So we're going to fill in our buy place and sell place variables here. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to ask if position get integer. So again, we're using that same function, but we're going to get some different information, and we're going to get this type here, and we're going to get the type of position that we've got, and the type will be, if I press F1, we can see the different types, position types here, very simply buy or sell. So we can say if the position type, and it's going to return the buy position type buy, or it's going to return position type sell. So if that is equal to position underscore type buy, we want to do the following. So we've got a buy trade open currently on the chart. So our buy placed variable now, we can now fill in with true. And our sell placed variable, we can now fill in with false. And in the reverse, you could just say else, but let's do it fully for completeness. Position get integer position type. If the position type is equal to position type, position type, can't type. Okay, so if it's equal to a cell type, we want to do the following. We want to say G buy placed is false this time, and G sell placed is true. So we're filling in those global variables we made earlier with the information from the chart currently. And remember, this has been done every tick. I've got an unbalanced parenthesis. Here we go. So I just compiled that unbalanced parenthesis because I missed the curly bracket, and we should be okay, but I've missed something else now. Brackets there. There we go. Okay, we're up to scratch on that. So we've now filled in our global variables, so we know whether we've got an open trade, and if we do, we've got that ticket number, and we also know whether it's a buy or whether it's a sell. So now we can move into our indicator logic to actually execute the trade. So all of that was just to get to this point. It's important that our expert advisor knows where it is in the world before it starts going crazy and implementing a load of trades. So we'll have a new section here, and we're going to open a buy order, close any sell orders. So that's the first thing we're going to do, is we're going to open a buy order and close any sell orders. So we have our momentum threshold that we're checking for. We set our indicator message, which we'll just leave, and we'll come below there. And actually, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to close the sell order. So we'll get the closing of the order out of the way first. So we do that. So we say if G sell placed. So if our momentum has gone positive, that's the first question. Is it above the threshold? And if we have a G cell placed, so we've got a cell open is equal to true, and our ticket is greater than 0, so we have a ticket number, we can then close the order. So we're going to position select by ticket, and we're going to select the ticket. We're going to use that ticket number to select that position, so that whenever excuse me, whenever in the future we use the information from there, we're using the information from that specific position. We're going to say request action deal. So remember, this is to close the order first. So we're actually going to close before we open. So we're going to say a market order, which is trade action deal. We're going to do request dot, and we're going to fill that information with the type. So in this case, we're closing a sell order, which means we need to buy. We need to put in the symbol that we want. So we'll use the symbol variable, and we need to put in the ticket number. So this is why we retrieve the ticket number. So request dot ticket. So this is really important when you're using hedging mode, where you can have multiple trades open in either direction at the same time. When we close the order, we need to know specifically which order we're going to close, which is why we need that ticket number. So we'll talk about hedging and netting and the differences in the execution of all trade opening in the next episode, so don't worry too much. This is the hedging method. In the next episode, we'll look at implementing the netting version, but also we'll use classes and objects to make it a really simple way so that you don't have to worry about that basically ever again. But for the time being, we not request.ticket, request.position. We need to say the position we want to close is the one that we have the ticket for. The volume for this, we're going to use position get double, and so similar to position get integer, we're going to use position get double. Sorry, this needs to go into our request dot volume variable. So position get double, and we want the position volume. So the current open position that we want to close the full thing. So we're going to retrieve the full volume, and we're going to set that as the volume we're going to close. We need to say what price we would like to close at, which in this case will be the ask price, because we're going to use we're buying, so we need to pay the asking price. So we'll use the symbol ask to retrieve that information, and that's the price we want to close at. We'll set our deviation as well at 50 points, so to try and avoid major slippage. And we're also going to put in a comment in here, which isn't mandatory, but it will be useful for debugging if we have any issues with that. So we're saying that we want to do a sell close. So that is filling in the information to send to the server to say we want to close this trade. Now we do also need to post the envelope, so we'll create a variable called sent, and we will then say order send, which is the main function, and we're going to put in the request and the result. We don't have to fill anything in for the result because that's going to be filled in by the server and returned back to us. And then just for completeness and to help us with debugging, I'm going to print a message within the journal of the MetaTrader platform, say sell trade close request sent, and then we'll also put in the value of that sent variable. So it will say true or false depending on whether that was successful or not. So this is the whole thing to close the trade. So it might seem like we're doing things in reverse while we're looking at closing before we've opened, but I think it's best practice to close any trades before you've opened them, because some brokers or prop firms that you may use may get funny about you having a trade open as at the same time as you having one closed. One open in the other direction, and they may even close your account for that. So it's important that we close the one side before we open the other. So that's why I've put the close position here first. So that was if sell place was true, so that we have we close any sell trades. We now need to open our buy order, and we only want to do this. Open a buy order. We only want to do this if we do not already have a buy trade open. Otherwise, we just keep opening buy orders until we basically run out of money to open orders with, which would be a bad thing. So we'll go through this process again of creating this order, but we will copy and paste it for the sell, so it will be a bit faster when we do the sell side. So again, we'll do a request.action is going to be our trade action deal for a market order. Our type will be a order type buy. So again, exactly the same as when we closed because we're buying. The request symbol will be the same because it's all happening on the same symbol. And the position number. So interestingly here, where before we said the ticket number to close, we're opening a new order, so we don't actually know the ticket number. So we're going to put that in as 0. Our request.volume. For this now, we're going to use our input variable that we made at the start to say the volume that we want to open. Our price will be the ask price again because we're buying, paying the asking price. So we'll use the symbol info double. We will put in the symbol that we're using and we want the ask price. We can now put in a stop loss or take profit if we wanted to, but in this case, we're just going to leave it unprotected in that way, just for testing purposes. We'll leave it as 0 so we don't put anything in. We're going to put in our deviation as we did before, which is going to be 50 points. And we're going to have a comment, which we did in the closing trade. So we'll say buy open with a semicolon. So we've created now our request to buy, and you guessed it, we need to create that sent variable, and we need to send that order to the broker for them to implement. So we can put in our request, say we want it in our result variable, close that, and we're also going to use a similar thing where we put a comment in the journal to say buy trade open request sent, and it's going to put in there the true or false whether that's send. Our grey tick goes through. So now we've got everything we need to open and close. We now just need to reverse that on the sell side. So we're going to take everything we have under the indicator message here. We're going to copy that. We're going to come to the else side for when it is less than the threshold, and we just need to reverse basically everything we've got here. So the first thing we do is we close the buy. We're looking if we've got a buy trade placed. We need to sell to close our buy orders. And when the price is now the bid. And just change the comments. So they're the right way around. And then we go to opening the order. So again, we're looking at the sell placed. If we don't already have a sell placed open, we're then going to send a request to sell. We're going to sell at the bid price, and we're going to change our comments to reflect what we are doing. So we've flipped that all over. We've now got a closing of the closing of any sell trades, then we're opening a buy trade, then or if the indicator goes below the threshold, we're going to close any buy trades and open a sell order. And we then send the envelopes. We print a message to say whether our sent has gone. And then we don't need to do anything with anything else. We can just click compile, make sure we don't get any errors or warnings, and we're ready now to go into the MetaTrader to test whether this works. So we're back in MetaTrader now, and we have built and compiled our expert advisor. So as we do in other lessons, we'll drag this onto our, platform, but actually we're not going to do that today because it will actually now open up some trades. What we're going to do is we're going to go to up the top here to view. We're going to go to the strategy tester, which you can also open with Control R, and that will bring up the backtesting strategy tester for the platform at the bottom here. So we can select our lesson 9 expert advisor. We can set up the parameters that we want, the Euro USD, on the hourly. We're going to say the last year. It doesn't really matter at this point, accurate data, all of that kind of stuff, time frames or time spans that you do it on. What we're really just looking at now is, does the expert advisor work in the way that we expected it to? So what is really important here is that we come down to the optimization is disabled, but we want visual mode to be on. So we're going to tick that to make sure that is on, because what that's going to do is it's going to bring up a backtest chart and it's going to show us the trades being taken in real time. So once we've set that up and we make sure visual mode is on, we can click start and it will open up the, and I'll just pause that. It will open up the visualization window, which you can see here. And actually it's going quite fast. So we've already opened some trades. So you can see it opened a sell trade there. And the time that it did, momentum was 99.85. So that was when the system started, and momentum was negative. So we opened a sell trade, which is good. That's what we expected. And that trade carried on down to here until momentum went above 100 to hit, which is here as 100.7. Now, this is where things start to go a bit wrong. So we have got our indicator seems to be open, but we opened a buy trade here, but immediately opened a sell trade as well. We closed our buy, opened a sell, then opened another buy, I think, and then we've closed that here, and then we've opened a buy. And you see there's lots of trades happening in this area, probably more than we would want. And if we carry on down here, it looks like a similar thing is happening over here. We'll just turn the speed up here, and we'll press play, and it's going to carry that on. And you can see it seems to be working pretty well. And then sometimes we get multiple trades on the same bar being opened and closed, which I don't think is what the type of behavior that we want. But overall, it seems to be working, but there is a problem. And at the beginning of the video, we did mention that there would be a problem. So I'll just speed that up now so it goes as fast as my computer will allow it to. You can still see here the comment for go long, go short is still being there. And you can actually see we're getting a lot of trades open and close when the message is changing between long and short. So what that looks like is that because we're using the most recent price information, the momentum indicator is going above and below the threshold whilst that candle is still being formed. So within the same candle, especially when it gets to the 100 level, it might briefly go above 100, then drop down to below 100, then go up above 100, then drop down. So we're having an issue here where we are using, because we're using the most recent price data and not the close of the last bar as our trigger, that we're getting lots and lots of trades opening, like you can see here, within the same bar, and that is going to be problematic because if you were to try and trade this in a, and I'm not suggesting you should, if you were to try and trade this live, you would find your costs of trading, your commissions, your spreads, your slippages would be quite high and probably would negate any positive edge that you're able to extract from the market. So how far are we from done? We're still only in February, so I'm quite confident that the system is working. There is some problems which you need to resolve, which we'll look to resolve in a future episode. But I'm confident that the logic we put in is generally working, and you can see there are some trades that are happening. They're open for a good period of time, and some good ones. There's a good buy that's going up and a good sell that's going down, but we can stop that now. We're quite confident, and if you want to, you can then rerun the test with visualization mode turned off. And then that's going to run. You can see that green bar running along the bottom. That's going to run considerably faster than with visualization mode on. But I'm happy to do that now. I know that the behavior is as expected. We can have a quick look at the graph, and you can see this strategy is terrible. It's just going down, but that might be down to some of the behavior that we were seeing when we get near the 100 mark. So you can see we're just going down. But what we want to also look at here is the journal. You can see we've got a volume information coming in from the previous one. We could get rid of that. In fact, I'll just go back to the meta editor now. Where was that information? Array print last 5 volumes. I'm going to recompile that without that because that's just getting in the way. I'll have another go. And you can see now the information coming for the trade. So you can see here, sell trade open request. So this is when we sent the trade. True, so that went. Then the order comes, an instant buy with the volume we set, on the symbol we set, at the price we set. And it then tells us what the deal information is. So that's a sell trade open request. And then this one is a buy, that's a close. You can also see the time on here, so you can see when they're happening. And if you look actually here, this is a good example. I'm at, here, you see this one here, 38 minutes past 1. We've got a buy close being sent. We've had a buy open the minute before. We've had a close 1 minute later. We've then got a sell open, and then 20 seconds later, we've got a sell close request and a buy open request. And then 20 seconds after that, we've got a buy close request. We've got a sell open. So you can see lots of trades are happening within seconds of each other, and that's not allowing the momentum to carry enough for us to extract profit out of that. So we're going to look to resolve that in a future lesson, 2 lessons time. We'll do that. In the meantime, we need to look at something else. So in the next video of this MQL5 series, we're going to be using classes which we covered previously, and we're going to look at using them to make our opening and closing easier. So we're going to save ourselves some time with all the information that we had to fill out again and again with request.action, etc. And we're going to use some classes with some pre-filled in information that's going to make that process smoother. We're also going to build two different ways to open and close an order. And the two different ways we'll look at hedging and netting. So we need to understand what the difference between hedging and netting is and why that's important, because depending on where you are in the world and depending on the brokers you have to use, your MetaTrader may use hedging or it may use netting. And if you try and use the wrong kind of opening and closing method, you might get some weird results in your expert advisors. This will be a great episode if you're using this process to learn about coding in general and you want to learn about things like inheritance and the scope of encapsulation for your classes. This is some key information within the coding world that we'll get to expand on in the next lesson. And last of all, if you have any questions, do drop a comment or a question in the section below. That's where I'm most active. You can go onto the Discord forum. The link is below, or you can reach out to me direct on Instagram, X, or TikTok. The best method is to use the comments, and I've put the best methods in order on the screen. But that's all we've got today. I hope you've enjoyed getting your expert advisor to finally be able to execute its own orders, and I'll see you next week for the next episode.